Hello and welcome along to Utter Punts. We are all back together again. Well, at least I'm here this week. I've decided that, I fancy turning up for a change. This is episode 8 at the end of week 8 of the NFL, and there's loads to talk about. Again, some brilliant results in this week's fixtures. And we'll get onto all of those in just a moment. First, let's say hello to the crew, shall we? First up, it's our resident Ginger Viking, Big Dave Keane. Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm really good, mate. No one's nicked my bins.
Yeah. We'll get more onto this in just a second. Currently, producer Bell is in a running battle with a neighbour over a stolen recycling bin. Look, it's absolutely the most wondrous middle-class, middle-age argument I've ever come across in my entire life, and I am absolutely here for it. Also with us this week is Big Jim. Hello, mate. How are you?
Victory Monday. I am perfect. It doesn't happen very often, but Victory Monday, we are here. So, yeah, I'm good, mate. Thank you.
And I am in...
What?
Who did you beat?
Oh, the Ratbirds.
Carry on there.
I am also in a really good mood because the Giants haven't played yet, so I've got nothing to be angry about, which is absolutely joyous. That takes place this evening, and... I might stay up or I might just go to bed because that's the safest place for me and my mental health. I thought before we started today, getting into the podcast proper, you two might like to play a little game. What do you reckon? Fancy it?
I'm all right for a game.
Dave, we're going to do the blind ranking game. So essentially how this works is that I give you a list. They're all sort of... related, and you have to put them in an order where 1 is the best and 5 is the worst. Okay, Dave, your topic for today is Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
Okay.
Hall of Fame quarterbacks. I'm going to give you 5. You just have to tell me which position 1 to 5 you would put them in.
Okay.
Joe Montana.
Nah. 5.
Ooh, brutal. Troy Aikman is number 2. Troy Aikman.
4.
Okay, this is interesting. You've got positions 1, 2 and 3 left. Brett Favre is next on the list.
3. That's Minnesota Vikings bet Favre, right?
Okay, yeah. I mean, are you just going in reverse order here?
I felt like what I've done is basically decided that Joe Montana wasn't fit to be anywhere other than 5th. And everything's just stacking nicely on top right now. But we'll see if it carries on.
Next one is Peyton Manning.
Oh, well, you see, 2nd.
Is this? Would you have put them in that order if I'd have told you everything from the start?
Yeah.
This is absolutely
I think
uncanny.
it's Tom Brady last, right?
It isn't. It isn't.
Oh,
it's Dan Marino.
Oh, I might have swapped Marino and Peyton around.
So Dan Marino, top of Dave's list in his blind ranking of Hall of Fame quarterbacks.
It was fun though, right? I mean, like...
Yeah, look, we'll take it.
In Ace Ventura, hopefully.
Yeah, it was in Ace Ventura.
Jim, just for bants, I'm going to get you to blind rank these Minnesota Vikings head coaches.
Okay.
All right. We're going to start with Leslie Frazier.
Oh, he was so bad. It's either 1 or 5. It depends if I'm doing this seriously or not, to be fair. No, we'll go with 5.
Okay, Leslie Frazier in at 5. Number 2 is Mike Tice.
Who?
It was a decent enough offensive coordinator style GM before I started watching, so my information might even be bad. But
I'm going to go with 4 on that one because I am not aware of this human being. I'm not going to lie.
I love this. He would have gone 5th, except the person that he's never heard of was a better option than Leslie Frazier.
He must be. No, Leslie Frazier was that bad. So.
Number 3 is Mike Zimmer.
Oh, I like Zimmer. I like the fact that he doesn't take any. I'm going to go with number 2 for Zimmer.
Okay, so you've got position 1 and 3 left to go. Number 4 on your list is Brad Childress.
Oh,
is he 1 or is he 3?
He's 3.
It's interesting. So that leaves the final one, Kevin O'Connell.
Well, other than his
And you can
gutless play calls when you're winning against the Lions last week, I quite like Kevin O'Connell. I mean, I don't appreciate the amount of joy that he's brought to my Vikings friends, but at the same time, I can acknowledge it. So yeah, I'm all right with that order. But yeah, Leslie Frazier, well down there. He's a good defensive coordinator. I think he's been D coordinator for the Rams and stuff. But yeah, I'm fairly happy with my order. Kevin O'Connell. Let's be honest, he's moved on from Kirk Cousins as well, which is another point of disappointment for me. But great from a Vikings fan's perspective.
I'll be honest, that is what makes Kwesi Adofo-Mensah best ever GM. The fact that he finally moved on from Kirk.
So just to give you those
4 touchdown games, Falcons fans enjoy.
I love it. These are the rankings then. Dave, with these Hall of Fame quarterbacks, went Joe Montana at 5, Aikman at 4, Favre at 3, Peyton Manning at 2, and Dan Marino as his greatest ever Hall of Fame quarterback, because he didn't leave himself any wriggle room. Jim decided that the person that he'd never heard of before, Mike Tice, was a better option than Leslie Frazier, who was at 5. Then he put Brad Childress at 3, Mike Zimmer at 2, and Kevin O'Connell at number 1 of Vikings head coaches. Well done, boys. Marvellous stuff. It's always nice to kick off with something completely irrelevant and totally inconsequential. So that works for me. My work here is done. I'm going to hand over to one of you to bring some talking points to the table. Dave, what caught your eye in the NFL this week?
Well, the first thing that caught my eye is a Hail Mary pass. A Hail Mary pass that came off. I think it's the 4th one I've seen since I started watching avidly around 2016. And it's the last one it's the first one I've seen at the end of a game, other than one that Rodgers threw for the Packers back in the day.
Do you want to see it?
Yeah, put it
Okay.
Shall we see it? So this is from ESPN's website, so you can have a little look at this.
4 at the goal line. They bring 3. Daniels backing up. He's just going to have to let one fly. Goes to the right side. Steps away from the defenders. Gives himself some time. Now steps up, fires. Heads towards the end zone. It is...
I mean, I was devastated for Caleb Williams, a man who'd completed 10 of 24 passes in the game, clearly deserved to be the winning quarterback in that game. So, I really felt for him. But yeah, I mean, the thing that made me laugh more than anything was there's another angle of that, where you can see one of the Chicago cornerbacks walking back towards the corner of the end zone on the right-hand side. So he's walking down the right-hand flank, facing the crowd as the ball is snapped. And he's basically giving the crowd some abuse because...
Do you know what, Dave? Shall we show that one as well? I think we probably brilliant. Should, because it's absolutely genius. Here it is.
Look at him. Hey, there you go. By the way, the ball's being snapped, and homeboy's over here celebrating, talking noise. And now I'm going to make even a worse play because I'm going to come in there and tip the ball up instead of knocking the ball down. So that kid right there...
Tyreek Stevenson.
And here's our spy. I don't know it, ladies and gentlemen. I have no idea what the hell he's doing.
Here he is again, look.
The other thing is, if you're going to... this one dude, look at him. Hey, there you go. By the way, the ball's being snapped, and homeboy's over here.
It's absolutely genius. I love it.
I mean...
To be the player that tipped it as well into the end zone for that catch, the karma associated with that is absolutely unbelievable. But to... have you back to the play for 3 seconds after the ball is snapped is unforgivable with any quarterback other than Deshaun Watson.
I'll be honest, it would have been a perfectly fine gamble if it wasn't for the fact that Daniels made that 3-man rush that they sent miss twice. But what is this thing with a 3-man rush on Hail Marys? It's something I'm never going to understand. When the Vikings needed one against the Lions, they sent a 5-man rush, and sure enough, we didn't have time to get the ball off. The game ended. I don't understand this fixation with the 3-man rush on a Hail Mary. They can only send 5 downfield, right? Because of the O-line rules. So rush with 4. Don't give them the time to set one up. But having said that, it was brilliant. I really, really enjoyed it. I particularly enjoyed it because of the fact that the Bears really thought they'd won, but they left 25 seconds left on the clock. And that was enough. Get in.
Is the three-man rush thing a thought from head coaches or defensive coordinators or special teams coordinators that it actually gives them an extra body downfield? Is that the reason for it?
Yeah. So the idea is if it's if you're blocking and then the QB decides to run and comes past the line of scrimmage, everyone can flood upfield towards it because you can't throw the ball forward now. But the thing is, if they stand behind the line of scrimmage, then they can still throw the ball forward. Therefore, you need to get some pressure on. I don't know. It's just something that they always seem to have done, and it normally works. To be fair, so maybe I'm overthinking it, but
it's a difficult one, really. I think it's a difficult one for me because I think it should depend on the mobility of the quarterback. So I think with Daniels, I would have sent more. I would have sent a 5-man rush, and I actually prefer being aggressive in that situation as opposed to taking your chance on it. But I mean, look, it's called a Hail Mary for a reason, right? You see it 1 in 100 attempts or something like that. I don't know what the analytics is on it. But ultimately, if you've got a mobile quarterback who can run around and you don't set the edge properly, you've got quarterbacks that are running in the 4.4s, on their 40-yard dashes now. So you could be made to look like it. It's really difficult because if you went aggressive and the quarterback makes you look silly, then your defensive coordinator is going to be under massive scrutiny. Whereas if you just do what you've always done and then basically say, okay, quarterback, beat us with your arm, and you're going to need a lot of luck because, like we said, there's 5 receivers down there against 8 defenders. We've often seen wide receivers go in for Hail Mary plays on defense. I remember Julio Jones did it a few times. The one from the Bengals, I can't remember what his AJ Green. Seen those, in that situation. But it's a difficult one. I just think when people have called an aggressive game, to then take your foot off the gas and only put 3 against an offensive line of 5, which we don't really see sacks on these Hail Marys either. It seems, the average ball out of the hand of a quarterback is, 3 seconds or whatever. Hail Mary, you're talking 7, 8, 9 for people to get down the other end of the field. And that complete lack of pressure, it's just, it leaves it open to that opportunity and that risk that they can score. And they did. I'm with Dave on this one as well, which is unusual, but I was particularly delighted with Caleb Williams' non-performance. I was keeping you boys updated on the group chat, just with, he's now completed 4 of 17 passes for 36 yards or whatever it was. I think he only managed to put 2 completions together in the 4th quarter, to be honest. And Jaden Daniels completely outplayed him for the whole game, which was what I was expecting. But yeah, it was a satisfying end to that game because Washington, I can't say they deserved it with their field goal heavy offense, but at the same time, the Bears did nothing until the 4th quarter.
Concur, mate. Yeah, I mean, it's literally one of those where if Caleb had got out of there with a win, then an awful lot of people would have been talking about how great he was again. But look at what he's actually doing. He's excellent at scrambling and avoiding a bit of pressure. But if you looked, he kind of bails out a little bit early, and on a couple of occasions there's a pass there for him that he ignores. He's going to have to settle things down. However, I mean, I just felt he was a gamble of the number 1 overall pick. He's doing a good job. He's doing better than I thought he would be doing at this stage. I'm just not sure how much more there is to improve with him. We'll see.
How much more have you got from him than you would have got from Justin Fields, though, without blowing the 1st overall pick on him, is my question.
He's quick at getting the ball out. Justin Fields would hang on to the ball a little bit longer than him. But at the same time, that's led to a few turnover-worthy plays and a turnover or 2 already, where he's kind of thrown it blind on a timing route. So they're clearly drilling certain game plans into him for the weekend, and if it works, it's paying off, and they're able to get it to function against a defense which isn't getting any pressure. As soon as you get that interior pressure, and it's the hardest thing for a QB to adjust to, I think, in the NFL, is getting good at navigating the pocket without bailing out of the pocket. But he's got the talent to do it. I just hope he gets the coaching to do it, because I don't really want to say this, but I'd rather be wrong about Caleb Williams. I'd rather he was successful, because the league needs more quarterbacks. There's been an exodus. There's been an exodus of talent, and the product itself is starting to diminish. It's simplified offenses. Look at what the Lions are doing. They're basically beating defenses just using levels concepts with a decent run game. It's worrying. It's worrying. The Goff has become one of the premier quarterback minds in the NFL.
I would like to mark this moment down. It's 26 minutes past 6 on the 28th of October, 2024, and Dave Keaton has willingly said that he wants to be wrong. He wants to be wrong.
I think he's banking
Jim's
on
face said it all.
I think he's banking on the fact that he won't be wrong, so he can say whatever he likes, and it's just the case of that when it comes back around, he can go, I said it all along.
You're right. It was just a humble bullshit thing I was putting out there, so I could refer back to it at some point in the future. God damn you, Jim.
I absolutely love it. Look, we're going to get a break in just a second, but I just wanted to bring up the Jets before we go any further. I saw a stat on Twitter. Thanks very much to Dan for sending this through to me. Scored more than 20 points, didn't turn it over, allowed fewer than 250 yards. In NFL history, teams are 750 wins to 1 loss, including playoffs, when they generate that box score. So if you've scored more than 20, if you didn't turn it over, and you allowed fewer than 250 yards, would you like to know who the one loss in those 751 games is?
It happened this weekend, because I remember
it was the Jets. It was the Jets this weekend. The
Yeah,
only
'cause Brad
time
just
in
didn't turn it
NFL
over,
history that they generated more than 20 points, they didn't turn it over, they allowed fewer than 250 yards, they lost the game. That is mental.
They're an absolute mess, to be honest. I think if you watch the Jets and the games that they're playing in, Rodgers doesn't look like the Green Bay Aaron Rodgers that we know. He looks indecisive, holding onto the ball. He's got weapons galore. Their offensive line isn't horrible. They've got a good defense, but they can't put anything together. And I think I don't understand the logic behind firing Salah when they did fire Salah. I think if you've made your bed, you should just probably lie in it for most of the season. And I actually think the team looks considerably worse without Salah in charge of it. And I can't remember who's been tasked to take over from him. But you're leaning heavily on Nathaniel Hackett, who's obviously one of Rodgers' good buddies. And we saw his lack of ability as a head coach in Denver a couple of seasons ago. And he's come back and, saw a stat the other day, and where they are in the season now with the passing touchdowns, interceptions and yards is literally within 10 yards of, and the record's the same as when they started Zach Wilson. For a whole for the first 8 games of the season. So at the moment, the stats are being compared between Rodgers and Zach Wilson, and they are pretty much exactly the same. That shows it doesn't matter what the personnel is. The coaching is part of it for sure, but there's a fundamental problem with the ethos and just the general, attitudes and behaviours of that Jets team. And I do think that portions of that team have give up. They've obviously just acquired Devontae Adams, which isn't, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that was a needle move for if a contender had done that. Now he's gone from the 2-6 Raiders to the 2-6 Jets. So it's not, I appreciate it's another one of Aaron Rodgers' buddies, but he's 2 years older, and did they need a wide receiver when they had Garrett Wilson, one of the top 5 to 10 in the NFL? Probably not. But it is what it is. They're going nowhere fast, and will be looking at another high pick in the draft at the end of the season, in my opinion.
I'd like to rebuttal on behalf of Aaron Rodgers, if that's all right.
Please do.
First of all, Jeff Ulrich that's the new head coach he wants in DC. He's got a fantastic beard.
Okay.
Second of all, Second of all, like, it's probably Rodgers' last season in the NFL. If he wants to spend his last season having a sleepover with one of his best mates, why can't he? Because apparently Adams is living with him now. So, like, you know, it's literally one of those where when you're firing your head coach in the middle of a season and then you're promoting the DC. So Salah was a defensive coach. So you kick him out, then you promote the guy who was halfway in charge of a defence which was solid, presumably with the concept of keeping that defence solid. But if you're going to kick out a head coach, you need to bring in some new blood. I've said it before, I'll say it again, I have no idea why on earth the Jets haven't at least approached Belichick to come in as some form of consultant, because then at least you're going to get an honest assessment of where Rodgers is as a quarterback, because he's not going to pull any punches. We know he'll move on from a QB if he thinks they're starting to slide, right? So if he's available, use him in that capacity. I mean, the coaching staff there, we've already mentioned Hackett. Like, the coaching staff seems to be largely made up of players. I've heard it described as a player-led team prior to Rodgers' arrival there. That team culture about holding each other accountable, something that the Eagles did very successfully in 2017 under Doug Pederson. But I think that Rodgers is going to have to try to unite the whole squad. And I don't think it's a viable thing for him to be able to do based on the context of what's going on, because he is being painted as the guy who removes Salah, much as he says he likes Salah. And yeah, all in all, it's a dumpster fire. And I think even if you took Rodgers out there and you put him on the Dolphins, I think they potentially have a winning record, because there's a different level of offensive talent available. Well, mind you, there's still not. That would be without the Dolphins having all the injuries we've had this year. But all in all, he can't possibly win in this situation. If there's going to be a new GM, probably, because I imagine the current GM's probably going to get fired, or there's going to be a new head coach. Where does Rodgers fit into that? We've discussed so much about the importance of a quarterback needing to be wanted by a regime. And a 42-year-old Aaron Rodgers, 2 years removed from an Achilles injury, this is probably his last season there.
Yeah, I think
might be his last season, full stop.
Well, yeah, and I think it's either his last season. It could be his last season. He might have one more in the tank. Either way, it's, you know, he's not dealing with a Green Bay support system that would, that makes players look better than they actually are. You know, Green Bay are famed for not drafting a wide receiver in the first round. Yet New York, you've got Garrett Wilson there, who's a high first round pick. You know, they've got Devontae Adams, who admittedly wasn't a first round pick, but has been traded for a couple of them. There's plenty of assets in that situation, and I don't know if he's not getting the time to throw. His arm's gone. The answer is I don't know. But when you look at it, they look completely discombobulated. They're using timeouts to avoid delay of game penalties, which is something that drives Aaron Rodgers crazy. And that's just that you shouldn't be having these issues in week 8 in the season. This is something that you get ironed out in pre-season in game 1 or 2, but they're not. They've got worse from game 1 and 2.
The only way that we're going to find out what happens is to wait and see what happens, I guess, with Aaron Rodgers and the Jets. We'll keep an eye on it here on Utter Punts. We're going to talk about the Honolulu Blue Flu in just a moment. But first, a message from our sponsors. Here at Utter Punts, we love watching the NFL with friends, and in our opinion, there's no better place to grab a bite to eat and watch the NFL than Beer Keller in Manchester. The burgers are massive, there's loads of HD screens, the wings are great, and there's a superb choice of drinks behind the bar too. Most importantly for us though, the people are brilliant, like-minded NFL fans who want to enjoy the game and have a laugh. It's definitely one of the best venues to watch your favourite team in. Welcome back to Utter Punts. I promised you we'd talk about something called the Honolulu Blue Flu. Now, important to make a distinction here. The Honolulu flu is the jet lag that you suffer when you're coming back to the mainland United States of America after you've been on holiday to Hawaii, called the Honolulu flu. Basically just completely does you in. The Honolulu Blue Flu is about the Detroit Lions. The Detroit Lions play in a colour called Honolulu Blue, and this phenomenon has been generating a little bit of traction in some of these online forums where basically for the 2 weeks after you play the Detroit Lions, you're absolutely bollocksed. Dave?
Yeah, it might make a short week on a first day a little bit difficult. Yeah, I mean, the truth of the matter is everyone who's played against the Lions has lost the week after so far this season. Last week when Jim and I and Ollie were on the pod and we were discussing the different trade options, I refused to allow the Rams to be included not because of them, in all honesty, but because I knew that we were playing them immediately having played the Lions and that there was a high likelihood we were going to lose. I didn't factor into it the fact that the refs are blind or... I'll just say blind. That keeps us out of trouble, right? Hard of sight. Yeah. And I don't want to make any accusations about anyone being corrupt, earning a shitload off it, even though the passing line for Sam Darnold over under was 249.5 yards. And that face mask was not called by the head referee when he was on 240 yards and needed to just move the ball 10 yards in order to get that over through. There's an NFL investigation taking place into that as well. There should be, because there should be. And if there isn't, there should be. Investigate it. You can't have a corrupt sport when you've got legalised gambling. Anyway, that's beside the point. Those goddamn Lions did it again. They're a very, very good team. They themselves won again this weekend. I don't really want to dig into it, but they were playing basically a high school team, I believe, who traded away all of their good players already. So the 50-odd point scoreline doesn't really count for anything. But yeah, if you play the Lions, you're probably going to lose your next game. I'll guarantee that carries on for one more game because it's the Titans this time. But yeah, this weekend coming, you've got Detroit Lions versus Green Bay Packers. If all goes well, that means within 2 weeks, both of those teams will have lost once. That's what I'm hoping for. But yeah, can't stand them.
I think the lawyers are on the phone currently. Dave, you won't mind if I just have to do the bit that I have to do after you've spoken sometimes, which says... It's an opinion. It doesn't actually, we don't think we don't think that particular set of officials are corrupt.
I think that one ref is, but that's my personal opinion.
No, let's just, no. None of us truly think that. We don't think that.
Just incompetent, you're right.
I'll add to that.
Incompetence, inconsistence.
I thought he called it straight down the line. I didn't see a face mask. Admittedly, I didn't watch that game, so I was never likely to see a face mask. But in all fairness, I just revelled in the Vikings defense being torn up after Ollie had upset me with a terrible Myles Garrett trade offer that he made last week. So
we thought it was a great trade offer.
This just felt like complete karma to me. And I was absolutely delighted with the officiating performance on that Thursday night football game.
Jim, it was not karma. You put a curse on the season.
I hope so.
You said, I hope... No, you literally went, I pray that the Viking season implodes tonight. And sure enough, our left tackle is out for the entire season. Well done. I respect that kind of duty.
Where's the face mask there? It looks like to me that he's just... like patting him on the shoulder. I think it's in the eyes of the beholder. You see what you want to see.
If anybody's
there's two officials within 5 yards.
If anybody's an old school wrestling fan, that is a straight up mandible claw, isn't it? He's got two fingers down the kid's throat.
If he got it into that little nerve cluster.
Allegedly.
Look, I think that there are two things going on here, aren't there? And that is, you've had a really good start to the season. You've gone undefeated. All of a sudden, that run comes to an end. You then go to what has been a pretty tough team to play against with a superstar in that side that is currently absolutely tearing it up in Kyron Williams. It's just one of those things, isn't it?
No, it was Puka Nacua and Cooper Cup coming back on the same night, followed by 4 days having played the Lions. The Lions are an exhausting test for any team. But more than anything, the big hole that's been exposed for the Vikings right now is just how good Blake Cashman was at covering that space, which is currently being exploited because he got injured in the Green Bay game at the end of the first half. Since then, we've not been able to cover that space. He's got turf toe at the moment, so he's missed the last 2.5 games. Or I think he did play in the second half against Green Bay, but he could barely walk. So hopefully when he comes back in, that solidifies that middle again. I just think he's a very intelligent player who has been making incredibly good decisions for us when he's been on the field so far this year. But he is a player who doesn't really complete a full season. I think last year was the first year in his career he completed a full season. So we should have been aware of that and made sure that we have some reasonable coverage linebackers to sit in there. We've got Ivan Pace Jr., who's a cracking undrafted free agent from 2 years ago, but he can't man the entire middle of the field on his own, and our other backup linebackers are working very hard, but maybe don't have the coverage skills needed to supplement our defence. That's about it, really. Like when Blake Cashman comes back, and I'm hoping it'll be against the Colts, you'll see it tighten up again. And I suppose if it's any player, you don't need to worry about the intermediate areas of the field with. Is that Richardson? Like, he can either hit it long or he splats it short. Yeah, so we'll see.
Look, I think we need to bear in mind here as well with the Honolulu Blue Flu. The Lions are probably the best team in the NFL at the moment, to be honest. You know, they're beating quality teams, they're beating bad teams, but they're beating bad teams by margins that you should beat bad teams by, you know, putting up 50 points on the Titans yesterday. You know, they beat a good Vikings team with a good defense. And they put, you know, despite looking like they were going to collapse. So I think Dan Campbell is massively, well, I don't think he's underrated. I think everyone rates him as highly as, you know, as they should. He's a brilliant head coach. He galvanizes both that defense and the offense. He struck lucky on Jared Goff. Let's not beat around the bush because, you know, towards the end in LA, he was showing what we thought Jared Goff was going to be. But that offense under Ben Johnson is being called to Goff's strengths. They've got a two-headed monster at running back. They've got good wide receivers. They've got a great offensive line. They're a complete offensive team. Defensively, the loss of Hutchinson hasn't hurt them yet, but that's just through who they've played. As they get to play, you know, they've got Houston in a couple of weeks. That's where pressure, you know, lack of pressure could well hurt them a bit. So yeah, I think we just can't lose sight of the fact the Lions are probably the best team in the NFL at the moment. And yeah, I mean, I know the Vikings lost that game, and then obviously the loss to the Rams. I'm expecting them to get back on track because that'll get sorted. But yeah, it is what it is, and I think the Lions fans have been in pain watching that team for many years. They squandered arguably, you know, 8, 9, 10 years of Matthew Stafford's career with bad football teams, as well as Megatron retiring early. So they've had their share of misery over the last decade or so. So I'm actually quite pleased for the Detroit fans, and I'm glad that they're able to enjoy it. And they're a good watch. That's the main thing for me as well. Some of the I know Dave was belittling their offense about levels earlier, but ultimately, yeah. But it is a little bit bland, but they execute it phenomenally.
Oh, they execute brilliantly, and they get their players in space. I have, however, found out one important thing. You know how we've always wondered why Ben Johnson hasn't left the Lions?
Highest paid offensive coordinator in the NFL?
No, it's not even that, mate. It's the fact Sheila Ford Hamp managed to get some CIA agents in on the raid of Diddy's house. And apparently he's got some videos on him. Liam, I just wanted to see your face for the lawyers, mate. You can cut it if you want to. It's a joke.
And I'm quite cool for the joke to be left in, especially as it was on me, because my heart stopped. All right. I was like, how am I gonna wrestle this into something that's reasonable? I don't need to, because Dave has made it very clear.
Mate, if it wasn't for the fact that I knew you would have absolutely bricked it, I'd have kept a straight face there and I'll let you off the hook.
I've just had a message from producer Bell, and it says "fuck off, Dave," is what it says, and do you know what? I concur.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one.
The Detroit Lions are, of course, the team in the league that have the best record, bar the Chiefs, who are just machine-like. And just when you thought that maybe there was a weak underbelly coming from the Chiefs, and we're only going to spend a couple of minutes on the Chiefs because it gets a little bit boring, just maybe there might be a little chink in the armour because Travis Kelce not doing what he normally does. All of a sudden, Travis Kelce has started doing what he normally does, and they just look ridiculously strong, don't they? The Chiefs, again and again, they're the team to beat.
They're more. It feels to me though a little bit more on paper than in actual execution. I watched quite a bit of the Chiefs game against the Raiders yesterday, and the Raiders had more than a good couple of opportunities to put that game away against the Chiefs. They turned the ball over. They made bad decisions. They made, the play calling wasn't. It just wasn't what it needed to be in the situation that they were in. I don't think Mahomes isn't the Mahomes that we've seen in the previous couple of seasons, which is a dangerous thing to say. But your eyes, you can see what's happening here. Look, I wasn't that blown away from them. What I would say the scary element to the Chiefs is that they've seemed to have reinvigorated their run game. And they're not exactly using high-end running backs. They're using some, Kareem Hunt, who was Brown's second string running back for the last couple of years. I think he was a offensive rookie of the year when he came through due to it, but we haven't seen that.
His career got derailed by some off-field horribleness. Yeah. Which, from what I understand, he's sorted his life out, so long may that continue.
But he looks, I was watching yesterday, and he looks quick. He looks slim as well. I think over the last couple of years, he bulked up for the Browns offense, but with the Chiefs, it was that standard. Like, when you've got a run play, if you can get 3 or 4 yards on every run play, then you're going in the right. Your offense is generally going to be going in the right direction because you're looking at third and short all the time. And that's where we are. That's where we're at with the Chiefs now. It's almost like they're playing to complement Mahomes, and Mahomes is being able to take advantage of those short yardage situations and still deliver. But his interceptions, he's thrown more interceptions this year than he did in the whole of last season. And there hasn't been a huge turnover in personnel short of the wide receiver core, which has obviously lost Rashee Rice because of Mahomes' bad throw. So, yeah, look, that's scary for the reason that they've been able to pivot to a run game that shouldn't really be much good. But in terms of actual offensive application, I was not impressed yesterday at all.
The thing that I saw that looked a bit different for them was the fact that Kelce was no longer getting double bracketed. Pretty much every game I've seen this season, like with their offense, there was a linebacker and a safety over the top, or even a cornerback going out to cover Kelce with some help over the top. What I noticed yesterday was on the plays when Hopkins was on the field, Kelce was getting more open. And I can't help but feel that's because people still respect Hopkins and are at least making sure that they're covering over. And if they're just using, I mean, it seems kind of basic, but they've got Worthy, who's incredibly quick. If they're just going to run him on go routes to take the top off the defense, and if no one goes with him, all Mahomes needs is for the O-line to hold up for a minute, and he's going to have his options. He's going to have Kelce on the short, he's going to have Hopkins on the intermediate, and he's going to have Worthy on the long. And if that run game keeps going, then that opens that up for him. It's simple, but Andy Reid doesn't need it to be complex. He just uses his chess pieces in the best possible way that he's got available to him at the time.
I agree. I think watching Travis Kelce, though, one thing came to mind for me yesterday, and it's just that he's far closer to the end of his career than he is the start of his career. Yeah. And when you see, I personally think Kelce's lost a little bit of mobility this year. I don't think he moves as well as he has done in previous ones. He's always had that long stride. He's been pretty quick. He's got good hands. A lot of this one is, he's not streaking down the seam for 40-yard completion so much this season. He's acting far more as a security blanket. And that may be because Mahomes is struggling a little bit, or it may just be a case of, he's 34 now or whatever it is. So, Father Time catches up with everybody. So, yeah, I mean, look, it's scary that they pivot so well. But I think if they do come up against a stacked defense, that has talent at all three levels, then they could find themselves in a bit of a bind if Mahomes doesn't kick into gear at some point.
Lovely stuff. The reason for touching on the Chiefs is because I want to talk about trades next, and they are involved in the most recent trade that has happened in the NFL. We'll talk all about that after this. If you're anything like us at Utter Punts, we love the fantasy games surrounding the NFL, but sometimes they're a bit too focused on their American audiences. That's why we were blown away when the Fantasy Game Day app rolled into town, a weekly fantasy game with player values in pounds totally dedicated to the NFL's UK audience. There's insights and analysis and plenty of opportunity to compete with your friends, but the best bit, weekly cash prizes. Use code PUNTS when you sign up for a free entry after you play your first week. Welcome back to part 3 of Utter Punts, where we are going to talk about some trades that have happened and that might potentially happen over the course of the coming weeks. The one to tell you about is that the Patriots have traded Josh Uche to the Chiefs for a 2026 6th round pick. Okay, so pass rusher from New England going to the Chiefs for a 2026 6th round pick. The bit that stood out for me there wasn't necessarily the trade itself, but the fact that they've traded for a pick in 2 drafts' time, Jim.
Yeah, I mean, the piece that normally works on that side is you'd normally get a round higher if you trade it for a year later in the draft. So if you're so effectively a 2026 6th would be classed as the equivalent of a 7th round pick in the 2025 draft. I'm a bit shocked by the compensation, to be perfectly honest with you. We discussed Uche last week as a potential trade piece, and after we rubbished the entire Patriots offense, Patriots team, it should be noted. But I'm still surprised that they've picked up a productive player for what is, it's essentially a packet of crisps and a Panda Pop in that sense. So I'm surprised. I'm not sure what he's going to bring to the Chiefs massively. He's
been playing in a bit of a dumpster fire defense. They've been decent against the run. Weirdly, Uche's been decent against the run. One of the few who did all right against the run last week when they got caught soft. I think it's basically the Patriots must have decided they don't want to pay him because this is his 5th year, right? Am I correct? This is his last year in contract. So my assumption would be that they're looking at where they've got to. They managed to get Drake May hurt. We said he was being played too early. They should have played Brissett for the rest of the season. Why are you putting a rookie, even a talented rookie who's showing flashes, but his QBR wasn't that great because he's struggling to process that inside pressure. They have a dumpster fire of an O-line. They were playing it correctly when they were playing Brissett earlier in the season. I don't think they'd have won the game against the Jets without Brissett coming back in. But I'm astounded that they've won a game and then they've traded him the day after.
Doesn't make any sense to me.
They must be looking at this year and saying, right, it's a write-off. Do we want to commit any future cap towards him? What does he want? He must want a multi-year deal. And they're basically saying, we don't know where we're going to be in a year's time.
And the Chiefs have basically said, for the sake of a 6th round pick, I'll take a 9-game rental on him.
Yeah, exactly. It gives us additional depth in our defensive on our defensive roster, without particularly damaging our future ability to improve the team. And if they get him in and he turns out to have an impact for them, well, I would have thought that Uche would be more than willing to sign on with a perennial Super Bowl challenger as opposed to, moving on elsewhere.
It's a great move for him financially, realistically. If you're going from playing in a Patriots defense that has been called soft, you're no longer associated with that label, which is a positive in itself. You go into a team that's definitely going to be in the playoffs. Most are expecting a 3-peat, which I don't think's out of the question. You're going there to win a Super Bowl. And then as a Super Bowl winner, you're going to come out of that into free agency, or you're going to get re-signed to win more. And you're going to make a small fortune because there's plenty of teams in the league that need outside linebacker and pass rushing help, especially ones that can set the edge and stop the run. And Uche, as we've said, he's been good from a run defense perspective. Rushing the passer, not so much. But at the end of the day, they haven't been playing too many teams that have been throwing every down because they've been losing. So it's all relative in that sense. And I think the Chiefs have got a bargain there from a 6th round pick perspective. Another bargain because I think the DeAndre Hopkins trade will work out fairly nicely for them too. So yeah, I mean, look, when you're a good team and people want to come and play for you and play with Mahomes as a settled quarterback and a settled head coach and a settled front office, you can pick up these players that are not in that, are not used to that environment, who some teams just want to get what they can get back for them. And I think that's very much a case of what the Patriots have done here. I mean, we laughed last week to say there wasn't anybody worth trading for. Uche was one of the ones that we did come up with in the end. And Ramondre Stevenson.
But we were kind of right as well, because we were looking at it from the Patriots side, like where could they get worthwhile compensation? Our judgment was they can't, and they haven't.
No, not for the equivalent of a 7th round pick. They absolutely haven't. Like that everyone knows. As you go down the rounds in the draft, 7th round is an absolute crapshoot. So I very surprised at the lack. I thought they probably would have got a 5th for him at least. So next year's 6th, 2026 6th is it's just the rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer, to be honest.
Any other trades we think might be on the line? Chuba Hubbard is a name that keeps sort of bouncing around the social media verse.
He's a good running back, and it seems ridiculous that both him and there's a couple of players over in the AFC at the running back position who I look at and think, why aren't you being used more? He's one of them. Like Charbonnet, his yards per carry isn't that great, but he's running behind a dumpster fire with a no line. And for the majority of the season, he had a QB who everyone knew that you only had to stand 30 yards off the line of scrimmage, and then you could rush him because he couldn't throw the ball further than that. Now that Bryce Young's back in, he's probably going to dry up again completely, because that tends to be what happens unless he picks up like a dump down or a screen pass from him. But there's also Kenneth Walker and Zach Charbonnet, both at the Seahawks. They had an atrocious showing on Sunday night, and both of those guys, who are brilliant running backs, ran for an average, I think it was 1.1 yards per carry and 1.3 yards per carry. So if you're not going to use them, and the current OC doesn't seem to be using them, let them out of there. Kenny Walker the third is a great running back, like really, really good running back, little bowling ball. So
yeah, I mean the only thing that I feel is stopping running back trades at the moment is just the lack of value in running backs. We've talked before around how you can pick up a starting running back in the NFL and get lucky in the 5th or 6th round quite regularly. There's a couple of first rounders. Was Bijan Robinson worth a first rounder for the Falcons when they took him? No, not in your life. Jahmyr Gibbs, he's the 2nd string running back at the Lions. He was a first round running back. So there's a lot of questions. I mean, you're in that situation. We've just said around Uche that, next year's 6th is very cheap for him. If you're trading for a starting running back like Charbonnet or something, what would you expect to get for that? A 7th? Next year's 6th again? Is there any point in trading when you're in that? Yeah. That's what I mean. Is there any point in trading for them? So I think the running back trade market is dry and will continue to be dry until more of a premium is placed on running backs. We see some teams willing to pay, but let's be honest, that's you can count those on one hand in most cases. Other teams will do a by committee approach, which rarely works for me. And then other teams haven't got a starting running back, but at the same time are quite happy to take that gamble in the draft. So I think running backs are not a hot commodity on the trade market. I think one name that is a hot commodity on the trade market is Darius Smith at the Browns. I think people view him as someone who can be plugged into a contending team to maybe make that defense better. There's been a lot of noise about the Lions being interested in him.
It's got to be, hasn't it? After Hutchinson's injury, like that, they seem like the best fit.
If he goes to the Lions, the only NFC North team he won't have played for, and when he arrived said, "This is where my heart is, let's go win a Super Bowl," will be the Bears. Because he's done the Packers, he's done the Vikings, he then went up and did the same thing with the Browns, where I'm here to win a Super Bowl. Great work, mate. But he is a very talented guy, and not only that, he's quite a charismatic chap as well. So yeah, if the Lions get him, I wouldn't be in favour of that in the slightest.
No,
God
and I
damn it.
think he's one of those players. I mean, but from what I've read, there's sort of 5 or 6 teams that are interested in him. And obviously, as a Browns fan, you'd hope that we can maximise the return on that. But we're looking at a 32-year-old pass rusher here who has arguably underperformed in his season and a half at the Browns. Dropped off the face of the earth with the Vikings once he got injured. Started off like a house on fire and then got injured and dropped off. So I think it's one of those situations. I think if the Browns hadn't won this weekend, then I think the Zadarius Smith piece probably would have either been done or been picked up a lot quicker. But at the moment, it's sort of in a holding pattern because if the Browns, now we've got a competent quarterback, the sky's the limit.
Why get rid of Zadarius Smith when...
Did you just call James a competent quarterback?
I just called Jameis Winston a competent quarterback and said the sky is the limit, and neither of you bit on it. So
I did. I started laughing immediately.
But you just let me have my moment.
I'll be honest. I was concentrating on the next question, and I'd stop listening to you, Jim. If I was,
I so wish Dan had been here for that one, mate. You'd have seen Dan's eyes pop out of his head with that one.
Speaking of the next question, why get rid of Zadarius Smith, given that he's, tied top, he's tied first for sacks for the Browns this season. There seemed to be a decent partnership there. Is it getting rid of some trade capital or some salary off the books, or what is it?
They're not going to win the Super Bowl. They might as well cash in.
I think there's a couple of things on this. I mean, we've got him on a 2-year contract at a reasonable $12 million a season. But like I say, he is 31, 32 now, so there's the age piece. We're also staring down the barrel as a team of having to work around Deshaun Watson's contract for the next 2 years. And off the back of that, to fill out the bottom of your roster, you stop looking at players that maybe cost you $2 million a year, and you're going to want to fill that with a 6th or 7th round draft pick because they're getting paid $700,000 a year against the cap. So I think there's the main piece is at age. I think there's also a bit of depth there with Obo Okoronkwo, who's also a good pass rusher.
Did he get hurt last night, mate? I saw him get sparked by Derrick Henry, didn't I?
Oh no, that was a Karamoa. Yeah. So I think it's a case of maybe the Browns are looking towards the future in terms of squad building and going, well, we're looking at a $79 million cap hit for Deshaun Watson for the next 2 years. So we need to find a way to fill out the bottom 6 or 7 places on a roster with cheap draft picks, which is effectively what this would serve.
Yeah. No, I mean, it makes total sense. The only thing I'd say is when I did see that guy go down, all I could think was, how silly are NFL players when it comes to tackling? Where you've got a 250-pound man sprinting towards you, you tackle from off the side, and the first thing you want to make contact with is your head. Like, wrap Derrick Henry's ankles. Stop leading with your head at his knees. It's stupid. I am
convinced, and there is nobody that can sway my argument on this, that there are certain skills that could be taken from the British rugby game, implemented in the NFL, and there would be defences and offences that would be a million times better off than they currently are. I saw a couple of it might have been Travis Kelce offloading the ball, going into contact, and as he went into contact, throwing the ball backwards to somebody that was open. And I thought to myself, if they could just get like an offloading coach in from one of the big rugby teams to sort of help develop those skills. No, it's got to fit, hasn't it, inside the NFL structure? It's got to work.
Jim and I discuss this every week. The ideal scenario for it is special teams, mate. Running the ball through the hands. We agree so much. Like, when you've got a 4th and 10 and the game's done, and like you're in a situation where you can like throw it down the field, and there's only 4 seconds on the clock. Like, why they don't line up with an outfit that is designed to have the ball? Look, we discussed this earlier with the Hail Mary. when you have a 3-man rush when you're doing a Hail Mary and it's against a 5-man O-line and you know that's what they're going to do, make sure that your O-line can run the ball through their hands and just use them as blockers ahead of the game and behind the game. You can't show me a single rugby player who wouldn't love the idea of, oh, my mate can run ahead of me and hit the guy before he can tackle me. It's a perfect scenario. Like, the first team that does it will take the league by storm because they'll be able to use it on kick-off returns, everything else. They just need to get that habit of, well, I don't know, take up 7-a-side rugby in the flipping off season or something. Do something.
And bring a defensive coach in that can teach you how to tackle. Because if you could bring some of those tackling skills over from either league or union, where you're able to wrap them up, it's incredible watching how much wrestling practice these guys do. In rugby at the moment, they actually in pre-season have a judo coach, a wrestling coach that comes in every single week to teach them how to look. All I'm saying is that there is a possibility here for a bit of a crossover that might benefit some of these teams.
Well, don't forget, before Lombardi there was no such thing as a pocket for the O-line. It takes one person to innovate.
Related to this though, let's look at it and go, if you imagine saying to a rugby team that we're going to bring on a player that's a specific kicker for you to take all of the kicks. That doesn't happen. You play, that's normally your number 10 in rugby that takes all, they kick the ball out their hands, they kick the ball off the floor. We see, if you watch international rugby, we're regularly seeing rugby kickers kicking the ball 55, 60 yards through the post, but they're also fully capable of kicking that ball 50, 60 yards into touch right in the corner, and that happens 10, 15 times in international rugby games. So you look at it and go, there's elements of the sport that could certainly cross over. And for me, looking at that, I'll go, well, we've got separate roster spots for a kicker, a punter, and a long snapper. So what, my centre can only snap the ball 5 yards. He can't do it 15. Is that what we're saying here? Because we could be completely oversimplifying, but it doesn't seem like that much of a reach to be for a centre to be able to physically snap the ball 10 yards further.
There are certain rules in terms of formations, etc. But those formation rules don't then stop you from taking advantage of the fact that you can throw lateral passes backwards as many as you want.
Tell you what, we'll put this on the talking points for next week, because the hyper specificity of positions in the NFL, I think, can be quite damaging. And
just to throw it out there, Liam,
there's a balance, isn't there? There's a balance that you've got to try and strike.
Johnny Wilkinson?
Yeah, what a player.
Okay, so Johnny Wilkinson, rugby player, but honestly, he could have been your backup QB throwing everything underarm. He could have been your place kicker, your kick-off man. He could have been your up man on whatever you wanted him to be. He could have been your long snapper, and he'd have made a hell of a running back and a hell of a linebacker,
and a great safety, and a great cornerback. Like, he just would have been, and that's it.
To be fair, he's an exceptional human. It's an inconsistent example for what.
Look, we'll put this on next week's podcast, because I think there's a bit more to talk about here, and we've just about run out of time because we've ticked over.
I need 1 minute to just elaborate on Victory Monday. I haven't had this,
of course,
very much. I haven't had this hardly at all. So
no.
I just want to say, Jameis Winston, you're a hero. And to quote Eminem, "Lose yourself" in the post-game interview was comedy gold. I appreciated it. And I also just appreciated the fact that you threw the ball more than 6 yards down the field on several occasions. So thank you very much. I enjoyed NFL for I think the first time this season yesterday. And yeah, overall, Jameis Winston, the new Joe Flacco.
I think that's a wonderful way to leave this week's Utter Punts, is with Jim smiling on a winning week. Thank you very much for watching, listening, wherever you get your podcast from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell. We will see you next week.